What if the messiest moments of your life weren't proof that you're broken, but raw material for becoming stronger than you've ever been? Think about it. The heartbreak you never planned for. The version of your life that quietly fell apart. The nights you felt stuck, numb, or overwhelmed, staring at the ceiling asking, "Who am I now?" If that feels familiar, this story is for you. Because the Book of Alchemy isn't really about journaling. It's about what happens when you stop running from your inner world and start listening to it. And here's where your journey begins. Suleika Jaouad didn't pick creativity because life was easy. She picked it because life became unbearable. At 22 years old, she was diagnosed with leukemia. Her chances of survival? 35%. Just like that, her plans vanished. Her relationship shifted. Her sense of identity collapsed. And yet, in the middle of hospital rooms, treatments, and isolation, she did something quietly radical. She wrote. Not to be inspirational, not to be productive, but to stay human. She wrote to give shape to fear, to talk back to uncertainty, to remind herself that even when everything felt out of control, she still had a voice. And here's the first truth this book reveals. Inner strength isn't built by staying positive. It's built by staying present. Wait till you hear this. Most people think creativity is a talent, something you either have or you don't. But Jaouad reframes it completely. Creativity, she says, is a survival skill. It's how humans have always made sense of pain, how we turn chaos into meaning, how we metabolize loss instead of letting it harden us. And no, you don't need to be a writer. You just need a willingness to be honest. Here's where the hero's journey kicks in, and you're the hero. Every hero starts in the ordinary world. Then something breaks. A diagnosis, a breakup, a failure, a season where nothing feels certain anymore. That moment? That's the call. Most people ignore it. They distract themselves, they scroll, they numb. But Jaouad chose a different path. She sat with the discomfort. She asked dangerous questions like, what am I afraid to admit? What version of myself am I grieving? What still wants to live in me? And she discovered something powerful. Pain doesn't disappear when you avoid it. It multiplies. But when you give it language, it transforms. That's the alchemy. Turning the brutal facts of your life into insight, clarity, and strength. Quick pattern interrupt. Be honest for a second. When was the last time you actually sat with your thoughts instead of escaping them? Yeah, exactly. Now here's where the story expands. During the COVID lockdowns, the world shut down. Isolation hit hard. People felt disconnected, anxious, unmoored. So Jaouad did something unexpected. She invited people to write together. No pressure, no perfection, just honest reflection. Those sessions became the Isolation Journals, a global creative movement. And that's when another truth emerged. We heal faster when we create together. Strength isn't just an internal process. It's relational. This book is filled with voices from every walk of life. Artists, survivors, thinkers, people who've lost everything and rebuilt. Not because they had answers, but because they were willing to ask better questions. And that's what the Book of Alchemy offers you. Not advice, not hacks, but invitations. Prompts that gently push you to explore discomfort, to notice small victories, to redefine who you are after life changes you. Because here's the hard truth nobody tells you. You don't go back to who you were. You become someone new. But here's the good news. That new version? Stronger, more honest, more alive. And you don't have to rush it. You just have to begin. Because the moment you put pen to paper, you stop being a passive character in your life and start becoming the author. And in the next part, we're going to dive deeper into the real science behind this. Why writing actually rewires your brain, and how small daily acts of creativity build unshakable inner strength. Trust me, this is where it gets real. Here's something most people don't realize. Your brain doesn't care about motivation. It cares about meaning. That's why willpower fades, why positive thinking collapses under pressure, why you can know what to do and still feel stuck. But this is where the Book of Alchemy quietly flips the script. Because journaling isn't just emotional, it's neurological. Wait till you hear this. When you write about your experiences, especially painful ones, your brain shifts activity from the emotional centers to the rational ones. In simple terms, you stop drowning in feelings and start organizing them. That's power. Suleika Jaouad didn't journal to fix herself. She journaled to witness herself. And that distinction changes everything. Most people think inner strength means being unbothered, not reacting, staying tough. But real resilience is different. It's the ability to feel deeply without being destroyed by it. Writing gives you distance, perspective, choice. Instead of saying, "This is happening to me," you start saying, "This is something I'm experiencing." Small shift, massive difference. Here's the hero's journey moment most people miss. After the call to adventure, there's resistance, doubt, fear, the voice that says, "What's the point?" Jaouad faced that voice constantly, especially during relapse, especially when the future felt uncertain again. But she kept showing up to the page, not to be brave, but to be honest. And here's the secret science of inner strength. Consistency beats intensity. You don't need breakthroughs. You need returning. That's why this book is built around prompts, not essays telling you what to believe. Prompts do something powerful. They bypass your inner critic. Instead of asking, "Am I doing this right?" you ask, "What's true for me right now?" And suddenly, the pressure dissolves. Quick reality check. Have you noticed how clarity always comes after you write, not before? Exactly. That's because writing is a thinking tool, not a reporting tool. You don't write because you know. You write to find out. And when you do this regularly, something incredible happens. Your nervous system calms. Your sense of agency returns. You stop feeling like life is just happening at you. This is where Jaouad introduces the idea of alchemy. Not magic, not manifestation. Transformation. Taking what hurts and asking, "What can this teach me?" Not immediately, not perfectly, but honestly. Here's another pattern interrupt. If your younger self could see how you've survived so far, would they call you weak? Probably not. And that's the point. Inner strength isn't built by avoiding pain. It's built by metabolizing it. This book's structure mirrors real life. Beginnings, love, loss, rebuilding, expansion. Because strength isn't linear. You don't arrive, you practice. And journaling becomes the practice. Not every day is profound. Some entries are messy, some are boring, some are just lists. And that's okay, because the act itself is the medicine. Jaouad says creativity isn't about producing something impressive. It's about staying in conversation with your life. When you stop that conversation, confusion grows, anxiety grows, disconnection grows. But when you write, even a few lines, you remind your brain, "I'm here, I'm paying attention, I matter." That's not self-help fluff, that's regulation. And this is why community matters so much in this book. Reading other people's words does something subtle but profound. It normalizes your experience. You realize your thoughts aren't strange, your fears aren't unique, your questions are shared, and suddenly, isolation loosens its grip. Because strength multiplies when it's witnessed. Here's the truth most people avoid. You don't become strong after things get better. Things get better after you build strength. And strength is built in small, quiet moments, with a pen, a page, and a willingness to be real. In the next part, we'll talk about how this practice reshapes identity, how writing helps you answer the question, "Who am I now?" after life changes you. And trust me,
This is where transformation becomes permanent.
Here's the moment nobody prepares you for. It's not the pain itself. It's the question that follows. Who am I now? After the loss, after the illness, after the breakup, after the dream quietly dies. Most people try to answer that question too fast. They rush to rebuild, rebrand, stay positive. But the Book of Alchemy does something radical. It tells you to pause, because identity isn't something you decide, it's something you listen for. But here's where it gets real. If you never give yourself space to grieve the old version of you, you end up dragging it into the future. Jaouad learned this the hard way. Cancer didn't just threaten her body, it shattered her timeline. Plans dissolved, certainty disappeared. The person she thought she'd become vanished. And journaling became the place where she could say the things she couldn't say out loud. I don't recognize myself. I'm scared this is all I'll ever be. I miss who I used to be. Those sentences weren't weakness, they were honesty, and honesty is where strength is forged. Wait till you hear this. Psychologists call this narrative identity. Your sense of self is shaped by the story you tell about your life, not what happened, the meaning you give it. When trauma hits, that story fractures. Journaling helps you slowly stitch it back together, not as fiction, as truth. One prompt at a time, one question at a time. And here's the key shift. You stop asking, how do I go back? And start asking, how do I move forward without abandoning myself? That's alchemy, turning pain into wisdom, confusion into clarity, survival into purpose. But this doesn't happen by forcing optimism. It happens by letting complexity exist. The book invites you to hold two truths at once. This is hard, and I'm still here. This hurts, and I'm learning. This isn't what I wanted, and something meaningful can still grow. That's emotional maturity, and most people never practice it. Here's a quick pattern interrupt. Have you ever noticed how the strongest people you know aren't loud about it? They're grounded, curious, present. That's not accidental. That's what comes from spending time with yourself, on the page. Jaouad's contributors echo this again and again. Writers, artists, survivors, different lives, same realization. You don't find yourself by chasing answers. You find yourself by asking better questions. Questions like, what am I avoiding feeling? What am I proud of surviving? What deserves my attention right now? What does healing actually look like for me? No one else can answer those for you, and that's where confidence quietly returns, not the loud, performative kind, the calm kind, the kind that doesn't need approval, because when you've sat with your own truth, other people's opinions lose their grip. This is why journaling becomes an anchor during chaos. It creates continuity. Even when everything changes, you still show up. Same notebook, same ritual, different season. And over time, a new identity emerges, not polished, not perfect, but real. Here's something Jaouad emphasizes gently but clearly. You don't need to know where you're going to begin. You just need to stay in relationship with where you are. That's how inner strength compounds. And this is where community re-enters the story. Reading others' reflections does something powerful. It gives you language for experiences you couldn't name. It reminds you that reinvention isn't rare, it's human. The book becomes a mirror, not showing you who to be, but reflecting who you already are becoming. And here's the truth most people miss. The page doesn't judge you. It doesn't rush you. It doesn't need you to be impressive. It just needs you to show up. That's why this practice sticks,
because it meets you where you are. In the next and final part, we'll talk about how this quiet practice turns into momentum, how small creative acts build a life that feels grounded, inspired, and resilient. This is where inner strength becomes a way of living.
This is where everything comes together. Not in a dramatic breakthrough, not in a movie montage moment, but in something quieter. Consistency. The Book of Alchemy doesn't promise transformation overnight. It promises something better, a practice that changes you slowly, and then all at once. Here's the shift that defines the final arc of the journey. Inner strength isn't built in emergencies. It's built in ordinary moments, on days when nothing big happens, on pages that feel boring, on entries you think don't matter. Those are the reps. Jaouad calls this living an inspired life, not inspired as in constantly motivated, inspired as in rhythm with yourself. And this is where most people get it wrong. They wait to feel ready. They wait for clarity. They wait for confidence. But clarity comes after action. Confidence comes from showing up, and readiness is a myth. Here's the uncomfortable truth. If you only create when you feel inspired, you'll create almost nothing. But if you create because it's how you stay honest with yourself, you'll never feel lost for long. That's the secret science of inner strength. It's not grit, it's not hustle, it's not positive thinking, it's self-trust. And journaling builds it quietly. Every time you sit down and write, you send a message to your nervous system. I'm listening. I'm paying attention. I'm not abandoning myself. That message compounds. Wait till you hear this. Studies in expressive writing show that people who regularly reflect on their emotions experience lower stress, better immune response, improved emotional regulation, stronger sense of meaning. But the book never throws this at you like a lecture. It lets you feel it instead, through prompts that ask you to notice what's already here. One contributor writes about writing through grief in 5-minute increments. Another journals while sitting in a car before work. Another scribbles between hospital appointments. Not perfect conditions, real life. That's the point. Creativity isn't something you add to your life. It's something you use to metabolize it. And this is where urgency quietly enters the room. Because life doesn't wait for you to feel prepared. It moves. It changes. It keeps asking things of you. The question is whether you're in conversation with it, or just reacting. Journaling gives you a pause, a breath between stimulus and response, a place to decide who you want to be next. Not forever, just next. Here's a surprising realization many readers have. The more honest they are on the page, the lighter they feel off it. Because you stop carrying everything in your head. You stop looping. You stop rehearsing imaginary conversations. You start living. This is what Jaouad means by alchemy. Not turning pain into something pretty, turning it into something useful. Insight, direction, compassion. For yourself, for others. And that's where community comes full circle. When you're grounded in your own inner life, you show up differently. You listen better. You react less. You give without needing applause. Strength becomes generous, not loud. And the final invitation of the book is simple but profound. Don't wait for life to calm down to start paying attention. Start now. Start messy. Start where you are. Because every blank page is a threshold, not to a new personality, but to a deeper version of you, the one who doesn't need fixing, just space. So if you take one thing from this journey, let it be this. You don't need to become someone else to live an inspired life. You need to stay in conversation with yourself long enough to hear who you already are. That's where freedom lives. That's where strength grows. And that's where this practice quietly leads, if you let it. If this resonated, don't just let it fade into the scroll. Subscribe, and keep choosing presence over noise. Your inner life is worth it.